This was probably Caponier, and it was violently blown up. Whoa, not what I had expected to see. Today I'm taking you to two different places that are very, very different. One that is fairly easy to make out what was a very large artillery fort. The other has a lot of questions, and it's very hard to piece together and to find, but you will see. But let's start here. If you look at the defenses of Warsaw, it was not just the Modlin Fortress group to the northwest, but also it had to be defended farther to the east, from where a Prussian army might strike. That had to be defended. And another large artillery fort was placed here, as part of the outer ring of forts connecting to the Warsaw Fortress. So today first we are visiting
Fort Beniaminowo zespołu twierdzy Zegrze pod Warszawą.
The fort was built by the Tsarist Russian army at the beginning of the 20th century as a fort connecting to the Zagreb Fortress with the Warsaw Fortress. Construction work was started around 1904. 4 other forts were planned on this line, but only 2 of these were constructed. So, this earth and concrete fort was built on an irregular pentagon plan. Its base is similar to a rectangle. The entire fort is facing towards the northeastern direction. The facility has 1 barracks for artillery and 1 for infantry. It is currently a little destroyed in several places. The barracks, built in the neck of the fort, was defended by Caponier, which was unfortunately blown up. The barracks were connected by a wide tunnel with 4 exits to the courtyard of the fort. This is covered by an earthen embankment and slightly turns south. It divides the fort into 2 parts, a larger north and smaller south. With the head of the right forehead, this connects to a shelter for artillerymen. 2 freestanding concrete casemates were constructed in the fort, one to the south and one to the north. These were to defend the crossfields and semicircular concrete observation post. They no longer exist. Well, parts of them do. The fort was surrounded by a dry moat, defended from 3 counterscarp gun positions. The middle turnoff defended the whole forehead in 2 directions. The other 2 caponiers only defended the dry moats. All the caponiers were to be connected by a hidden communication tunnel, but this part was never built. Caponiers were connected to the courtyard by the help of hatches, with the exits under the shaft, and had a small storage for artillery. Above the entrances were built shelters for artillerymen. Between the shelters and the warehouses placed under them, there were elevators for serving munitions to the positions. In 1904, the fort was combat ready. It was a huge artillery fort. And further work continued until the outbreak of the Russo-Japanese War. And as a result of the 1909 Russian reform, further construction work was discontinued, and the facility was thus never completed according to plan, although its construction was almost complete. I go over this period in my first episode of the Battle of the Modlin Fortress Group. During the preparation for hostilities in 1915, the fort was not manned by the crew or was prepared for battle, although it was intended for the accommodation of up to 1,000 soldiers. In August 3, 1915, during the First World War, the decision was made to leave the Festov of Warsaw. The Russian garrison gave Warsaw without a single shot. It's not entirely correct. There was lots of fighting for the Modlin Fortress group, as I documented earlier. The fort here was blown up by Russian crews on August 10th, after the Germans captured the 2 smaller supporting forts. After the Germans took over the area, the fort was incorporated into the German defensive line, Brückenkopf-Warschau. The Germans took over an area perfectly prepared for defense by Russian engineers. During the Polish Bolshevik War in 1920, the fort was manned by Polish legions. And August 14th, Russian troops reached the surrounding villages and tried unsuccessfully to occupy the fort. During the heavy fighting, 10 Polish soldiers were killed and the attack was repulsed. The Poles took almost 30 Russian prisoners into captivity and, by the way, won the battle and saved Europe from communism. During World War II, the Germans again took the fort and strengthened the Warsaw-Zaporizhzhia line in Benjaminov. Here, a camp for Soviet prisoners of war was established, Stalag 368. During the liberation of Poland, the Fort Benjamin was bombed by a Russian plane, but it's unknown what, if anything, was destroyed by this raid. So let me show you, because this is a fun place to go through.
And you know, this chunk came off something. Now, another component of the Warsaw bridgehead was this huge fortress that was built 1905 by the Russians. And it was taken by the Germans in 1915, and again, 1944, incorporated in the defenses of the Vistula. And surrounded by here are a few more Regelbauten. Now, this was reinforced, and as you can clearly tell, it was also blown up. But it's a Russian fortress, so now we get to compare how that stacks up to anything else that was built by the French or the Austro-Hungarians. And it was repurposed a few times between the wars and for different wars. It's not reinforced with rebar, obviously, problem. But the metal is gone, the steel shutters are no longer here. And in 1944, of course, the Russians bombed it as well. Don't know if they blew it up too after the fighting was over. After all, they're the ones who built it. It's still a pretty place, I would say. This might be one of the prettier parts of the Warsaw Bridgehead fortified line. This is a pretty place. This looks a lot like the ones in the skirmish. Alright, you get it. These are the barracks, at least once they were. And one thing we just have to check was the ventilation in the walls. Like the French and the Austro-Hungarians, and I don't see any. I don't even see a place for a heater. I like this. Where do we start? In the middle or to the side? I'm kind of curious about this.
It's a really nice perspective.
It is. Just curious what's here. There's some wood dolls on the wall. I'm still looking for electricity. Now this part, it was reinforced. This looks like the reinforced bit. It looks much more like cement, but this is still a pre-World War I reinforcement. It would have to be. No steel rebar in this. Steel shutters would have been over the windows. Let's see this from the outside. It's hard to tell if this is a new reinforcement part or what this is. It looks original in some way, and yet it looks slightly different. I can't tell. Let's go back inside. This looks like the heating ventilation grates I've seen in some of the French forts and Austrian forts. I would imagine there would have been a kitchen in here, judging from the ventilation. Here. See the ventilation would, in some forts, run throughout the fort wall inside. But I don't think the Russians did that. It should be determined. All right. Put this on to keep the mosquitoes away. It's a little hot.
Yeah. We are close to this lake also.
Alright. So gigantic hole in the ground. Why was here a sandbox? I'm gonna step out. This must have had something to do with an upgrade or ulterior use or something, because it doesn't belong here from original construction. Unless it was a coal. There wouldn't have been a coal bunker in the middle of the fort. These are barracks. That shouldn't be here. Then again, all this sand shouldn't be here either, but who am I to complain? Well, obviously me, and I always complain, so you guys are used to it by now. Some steel doors here, that's probably also not original. So, it's the entrance. And more sound down there. That looks dark, that's interesting in itself. So, I'm just saying this better continue all the way straight down into Caponier. Just saying. I'm going to scream a little if it doesn't. I'll be upset. Don't even care what's left or right of me. But it's an interesting design that I have seen similar before, built by the Austrians to roll the cannons out into the positions out here. So here, not entirely sure what to expect here. It's a very large tunnel that, like I said, damn well better lead into a Caponier and not into a dead end. So, if I think I'm seeing a dead end, I'm not seeing a dead end. I'm seeing a small tunnel going down. Yes. Where did all this ungodly sand come from? And that's comforting. Powder store with ventilation. I don't even know. That's funny. That's funny. I guess I'll go with funny. I'm just going to tell you that it is probably not real. I'm going to go with it being a bit of a holiday fake or for fun or to scare teenagers or something. We see the fake mud and the splatter on the wall.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, they went all out. That's kind of cool. Hey, you may as well have a little fun. Doesn't ruin anything, so I'm good with it. Now, what I thought I saw, I didn't see. I didn't see what I thought I saw. So what am I looking at? More powder magazines in there. This shouldn't have been a dead end. This should have been a... Huh. I'm intrigued. There's a lot of shrapnel damage in the walls, but they were fighting on this for a number of times. For a number of wars, actually. What, 3 different wars were fought in this fort. Looks more like a... As this opening that would have led once to artillery positions out here that are now certainly no longer here. Well then. There's the other side. This is a very simple layout, actually. Very straightforward. But there has to be some ramparts. They can't all have been destroyed. Well, they can, unfortunately. Remember, 3 different wars, lots of bombing, and then Cold War, ravaging, teenagers playing, motocross track. So yeah. Well, I expected to do something, but not that. This must have been a detached munitions store or a cannon shelter. I don't see what else it would be. Bigger than I thought. I'll give it that. So you had a frontal entrance and one to the side. I mean, this is pretty strong. And yes, there's a significant blast in here. Lots of shrapnel. Somebody put a charge up against the wall here. Don't know how big it was, obviously, but it certainly looked like this building had maintained all its integrity. But yeah, this was a munitions store. We'll have a little room. And you have a little room for detonators with a door, and then out here you would have the actual powder. This is... I've seen dudes fight out of worse things during the Second World War than this place, certainly. So up here, there would have to be the cannon position up here or on the ramparts. It could have been here. It's very hard to tell. This could also have been easily, this could have been a 200 kilo bomb drop here. Very cool shelter. And here on top, see the ventilation for the munition stores down below. They survived, and on the other side they didn't, but the rooms did. So somebody's been playing with ATVs up here and having fun, and that's great, but it makes it kind of hard to determine exactly what happened and what was used for what. I'm standing on top of the caserne with its ventilation units, and over there is another munition store with an upper floor cannon position. This was a fairly decent sized fort. Interesting, on the roof of this, and it's actually quite well covered, camouflaged and protected. And here are these very sturdily built by the Russians. It could, of course, have been part of a reinforcing effort later, but it doesn't look World War II German. It doesn't look World War I. I mean, yes, it does look World War I, but it doesn't look World War I anything I've seen. Here it's now, were these protruding or have they been covered up? Was there sand on top of this for extra protection? I don't know. The fort is located in here behind the dirt hill. There's the first exit for cannons, munition stores, the second exit, and then here is the third cannon store munition shelter. Well, let's go have a look. This wall took quite a lot of damage. A lot of shrapnel damage. And this is cement, not stone. Look, this is cement with steel. I think this steel was obviously to hold in place a steel shutter here, but still, this was steel embedded in the rebar here, and with lots of damage. All stone, no reinforcement. Whoa, not what I had expected to see. Wow. I'm in the shelter, munition. Same here. But where does this go? That's dark. That is just dark down there. Where the hell does this thing go? This is detached from the main fort, which makes it... I don't know what this is. I don't know where it's going. I have no idea. Please don't dead end. I would absolutely pray this doesn't end in a collapse. I really want to know where this goes and what this was intended for. And surrounded by cement, all cement here. But certainly you're safe down here. You were going down, 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 and now we're coming back up so slightly. I will say that the ground has, well, the ceiling is coming closer to me. Let's put it that way. I am at this point, I'm almost crawling. All right, I am now crawling. But what the hell? Holy shit. Holy crap. What the hell? This is huge. Huge forward fighting position. This could have been built after. I don't know where this, I think this was a cement rampart. And then we have probably a slope coming down here. This was the fighting front. This direction of the fight. But look at this. I mean, it was blown up. Granted, unfortunately. I think that's what this was. You had a protected position for infantry here. Again, no rebar. So, this was not, this must have been part of the original fort. Because we know the Russians were beginning to play with steel and rebar in 1915 to reinforce some of their older forts. Wow, look at the pieces. These pieces are enormous. There could have been, of course, this could have been a very large Caponier that was blown up extremely well and scattered all the way up on the hill, but I don't think so. And this is the ditch hiding the fort. Look at the indents in this. Wow. Did not expect this. I really didn't. I thought this was just a simple layout. And more of these pieces. This was enormous. The tunnel I came out of is behind this. Wow, this is really something. And this at the end of a huge ditch. It must have been some sort of Caponier as well. Let's try to go back inside the fort, which should be up and in here somewhere. And here on top of the ditch, what the hell is that? I think I'm on top of the tunnel. Well, if the tunnel goes under this, all of this. So this is the top of, that almost must be some sort of reinforcement. New. I mean, look at this. But look at the depth here. This is the barracks, completely covered in dirt. And look how high up we are on this section. So the tunnels went way in under this and outside the ditch. Here's the dirt mound that surrounds, and then the ditch is out here. Way that way. Must have been 100+ meters. So I must be on top of a powder shelter store, I must be. This is the building on top of the tunnel. Lots of shrapnel damage. From outside, it certainly seems as if it was longer. And you have munition elevator. Yeah, munition elevator. Coming up here to the positions from the secure store down there. Somebody tried to blow this as well, but it's still here. Blew all the shrapnel. Wow, this really is 3 wars, remember. But this enormous plateau out here, what was that used for? Has it been flattened since? Or is this one big artillery square? Which does not make sense. Not historically, not tactically. You put the guns up so you can protect them. This was once bricked in as well. Back here in the dark, in the central fort. That was amazing out there. That really was something. I was curious what's down here and why this is all bricked up. Why are these rooms bricked up, I wonder? Well, they're really not. They're bricked up in the back there, being separated, but there was a prisoner of war camp in World War II nearby here. It wasn't in here, although it certainly is something that we have seen before. I would almost expect something like this, if it couldn't be used for soldiers or storage or something, munitions, then prisoners could easily be stuck in here, especially given the conditions they were presented with during the Second World War, or the First for that sake matter. Now the chimneys, however, this was bricked up, but this looked like a recent thing. Yeah. It would not surprise me if some of these had been used for some sort of storage after the wars. Again, this looks like the kitchen on the other side. And I'll have to see where the ventilation for the chimneys are here, since I saw where the chimneys are outside. I don't actually see any. I don't see any ventilation shafts, unless these are it, but that doesn't make much sense. The door.
The next fort I'm going to take you through have left me scarred for life. Not just the 6-inch gouge on my leg, or the several ticks I walked out of there attached to my bum, or the countless mosquito bites.
Fort 5 Dębina, Czosnów, to zespół forteczny modelujący pierścień.
There's something special about this fort. It was certainly an experimental fort, one of the inner forts of the Modlin group. But the destruction and the foliage makes it extremely hard to piece together with the plans. I just know there's more than was possible to find. Fort 5 was built in 1883 to 1888 as part of the construction of the inner rings of forts around Modlin, located to the south. It was originally created as a standard brick fort. Originally, the fort was built as a 2-tier object with a higher artillery shaft and a lower infantry rampart. The fort has a symmetric draw and 2 foreheads with 2 shoulders. In the neck of the fort there are brick barracks defended by a brick caponier. Not that I saw a single brick here, but that was the plan. I will explain. In addition, brick shelters were created. The whole fort was surrounded by a carnot wall and a deep fossa, surrounding not only the fort itself, but it also stretches on the neckline from both sides of the fort for several hundred meters, giving a very interesting look from above. The end of the construction of the fort coincided with the invention of the new shell and explosives in 1885. Thus, immediately, the old brick fort was now too weak and unable to resist the new munitions. So immediately it was necessary to replace the brick building with new ones made of concrete and steel. During the modernization of the fort after 1894, the most important combat brick objects were rebuilt, replacing them with concrete fortifications or ceilings. Some of the fort was reinforced with concrete. Instead, the liquid frontal chalet, an interesting concrete anti-scurry wall, was created, combining with the barracks of the potter led to under the moat. The same caponism was built, probably, in other forts. The escarpment coils were rebuilt into the concrete objects and were connected by a sub-replacement with the central waist. 2 shafts were liquidated, leaving the fort with a single. The ceilings of the underground tunnels were also reinforced with steel arch beams. There was to be armored observation positions on the shoulders as well. The reconstruction of the fort was not complete before 1915. During the First World War, retreating Russian troops apparently blew up some of the fortifications, although it is possible that the present destruction is the work of sappers immediately after the end of World War II. But the remains are extremely intriguing, with parts I have never seen before. Again, remember, experimental fort. And nobody really seems to know from where or when the damage occurred, or what may be underneath it.
And through the jungle, down here, you see the next fort, down south of Modlin, or what's left of it. Don't have a whole lot of history of this thing yet, but something bad happened to part of it. I think this might have been the Caponier. I think we're coming from the front. It's hard to tell because I keep having mosquitoes in my eye. Son of a bitch. I think it was. Yeah, you will excuse me for not exactly being able to identify what this is, but, well, it was something once, and it met with a violent end. Over here, however, is something that looks a little bit more recognizable. Although, certainly also looks like it had some violent encounters with history. Okay. With a little luck, there'll be a tunnel in here that'll lead us to the inside of the fort. That is my hope at this point. Still hoping I'm just not as optimistic as I was 10 seconds ago. Close defensive point, so the fort was in there. I think this is... okay. I've seen worse. I've seen worse. Well, yeah. Just don't know how far. I mean, I think we can go through this way. I just don't. I think this is the. I think it'll work.
Yes?
Well, I mean, it's just dirt. It's not rocks, really.
Yes, yeah.
Give me a second.
I hope because my
Yeah.
knee hurts a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I feel
Wow.
the blood running down my leg too. Somebody blew up the entrance. This was probably Caponier, and it was violently blown up. There's a spike thing right there. They blew it up out front, and somewhere here it cracked a bit too. It's an animation that's been hanging here for all these years in a thin piece of rebar. Okay. I actually don't know what we're looking at. Well, I think this was once maybe a fighting position or a defensive position here. And I can tell you this is made in cement, very, very clean cement, very small rocks, and some rebar. Not much, just mesh. This is actually interesting because look at how clean that cement is. There's almost no large stones in it like we're used to seeing. So I don't... Interesting. I don't think we're going out here. Oh, well, I know we're not going out here. Thank God there's a hallway the other way. So, they really did demolish this place. It's interesting because the Germans attacked from, they came from the north. They came down from the north and attacked Warsaw. This is a southern fort, which means, of course, it could fairly easily have been surrounded, eventually surrounded. There's 2 floors. Oh, look at all that steel rebar. Will you look at that? So, the late construction, 2 floors. We're on the 2nd floor down. Steel pipes there, rebar on top. Okay. And here's steel, cement, and rebar. And still there's indents for a little candle, a little lighting. And another. No firing position, so we're probably underground. Away from me. An abundance of metal insects in this place. Oh. Well, I guess we can step out for a minute and see where the hell we are. Ah, there's a spider in my hair. Ah. One entrance of some sort. Cement, lots of cement, rebar inside, covered in redstone brick. Okay. See if we can get an idea what this was when we saw it from the inside. Some of these are really overgrown by some really annoying nature. I'm just saying. Well, it looks like a little bunker, doesn't it? Looks like the highest point. Ooh. So, this is where we were inside. Here. This is really hard to tell what this was before this was blown up. I think we're gonna go back in the hole, honestly. Oh, this is where this cement split. This is very thick, at least 2 meters thick, if not more. We were down there looking up, so that means there's a fire important window over here, underneath me here. That's fine. Very well destroyed. It's very hard to see what exactly was what of any of this. Alright. There could have been a covered entrance that have collapsed, but there's 2 floors. We were on the bottom floor. But I honestly can't tell you what this was. Except an entrance. Alright, we're going back in the hole. Over here, following the hallway, and see where it leads. So, that would have been positions out here. We're going to go in and continue down the hallway. See what that tells us. We probably have been, this has been filled up with dirt since, which is why we're a little bit of a crawl to begin with. Hopefully this will lead to a part that's somewhat more intact, and we can see what it is. That's interesting. A little notch here. Okay. 2 close defensive points. Defensive point, possibly one for a light, possibly a bathroom, since here's a well. Could be facilities here. And here's another well. So, well, all right. Well, I guess we're back up and out the hole. Okay. This may be all there is to it. I actually don't know. And this has also been shelled, and I think this crater here has something to do with covering up the view from the firing positions in the tunnels underneath us. But there's more to this, and this is the ditch, and here's either an infantry position or another crater. I'm just still trying to discern. This is the ditch around it. I don't want to go back in the ditch, but the destroyed bunker is over there, and these are artillery positions in the open, dirt mounds surrounding them. Here's the first sign of cement. Have been hacking our way through nature, not exactly being sure where anything is. This is not an easy place to navigate, especially since we haven't actually seen any maps. Let's see, this is an observation post. Or is this? This was an observation post. There would have been a steel plate over here, and you would then be able to see, have it gone binocular something facing in that groove. So the fighting direction is to the right of me. That means the rest of the fort is beyond this. But there's also an entrance here. Maybe it just leads to this tower, and maybe it leads into the rest of the tunnel system. That is a wonderful gamble. This is the back of the observation post, with all along this ridge that's totally overgrown are the artillery positions. And down here is a wrecked entrance that we will now navigate at velocity when I trip down the hill, and the end. I think this is just the entrance to this, I think. But I will now pray to the bunker gods that there is a tunnel that will lead us into the fort proper. I would stay where you are, because there's not. No. This would lead up to the observation tower up here. There would have been a staircase and a platform. So, independent for the artillery, not connected to the system proper. So, but of course it is covered. So where's the damn system? We're just gonna enjoy how ornate this Russian construction is before we continue back inside. There's a large component to this that I haven't found yet, because we really are trekking through this, and it's very hard to see what's what in all this overgrown foliage by the map. Firing positions, machine guns, cannon, and in we go. Tunnel system. Oh, there's even a close defensive position in here. And when you come into the tunnel, and then here would have been a door. Okay. Here is the actual defensive position of the inside. And what is this? Is there nothing? This is just a room with a candle. So a place for the commander to sit, I assume. And again, look at this rebar in stone. This is really well reinforced again. When we're looking at the very latest evolution in 1915. That's when the Germans took it one way or another, and any kind of construction stopped. So, but this will say, okay. Well, that helps. Our entrance. Ooh. I think that is too collapsed to go through. I will have a look. We'll save you these, I'll have a look. And here you see these wonderful arches that were once full, covered with these arched steel beams. That is so very, very cool. And you see the last one sitting in there. But yeah, this is completely collapsed. This could have been a shelter, or it could have been a hallway leading up to the other parts that are collapsed. I cannot tell. Well, let's take a look at this before we crawl down there. Another close defensive position, just like the other side, although this is well destroyed. And here, it's entirely possible some of the walls were destroyed by scrappers as they were pulling out the iron, but it could certainly also have been battle damage or subsequent deliberate destruction. Alright, well, there's the tunnel. Don't be collapsed. Just be in the normal tunnel for a change. This is really wide. This is actually really wide. I think it was yellow ones. Oh, donkey. Yeah, that's a collapse too. Alright, but this is leading in a direction of something. So now we go outside and we follow this direction. There's a building running here. No windows. Appears to be a tunnel. We'll intersect up there, underground. And
Here's the firefox.
something. Huh. Oh, so this was an entrance. But the entrance to the tunnel would have been over there because we went some part next to it. So I guess we need to go in here then. Oh. What is all this? So this would be rear fighting position. So I want to see if this turns into something bigger at the end here. No, I mean, this is continuous. Down here, this is continuous. This is literally just, well, there must be an inside this. Although this really was wrecked well. All the parts are separated. This really must have been demolished in a real significant way. Especially considering it's full of rebar. Oh, I mean, jeez. When I say blown up well, I mean, this is blown up really well in many, many pieces. And I guess when you get down there, to get inside that thing, we need to go in over there. Enormous piece. See the arch down there? There's a tunnel, probably leading to an entrance there. But these pieces are absolutely gigantic. And I don't know what was what here. I can't tell what this was. And couldn't find any maps. So, but this really came apart in pieces. It was one of the problems they had with not pouring it all in one go. This is not small either. I wonder what these rooms were, but here you see how thick it was. Up here is all the mayhem and destruction, and there's a little entrance here. I would imagine everything in here is collapsed. Clearly, yes, it is. That's kind of what I expected to see. Everything is here is under all the rubble. There's normal people that take the path, the direct way to history, and then there's some of us who hack our way sideways, following the ditches and the moats and battling the mosquitoes. Well, I guess we're all doing that, but I have a very hard time telling you what all this was, except a very long barrack that has been really, really well demolished. I actually can't tell, except from the arches. You see the arches, or it's remnants of them. Could be the arches of the barrack rooms, but how can you tell? There should be a tunnel inside somewhere. Maybe in here. Maybe. To what's left of the inside. Yeah, that's not it. This is just demolished. We are a good 300 meters away from where this destruction began. Continuous destruction of the facade until here, which is mind-blowing how much that was destroyed. It is equally mind-blowing how big this was. And there's still one set of buildings missing that I've seen in photos that should exist, but I don't know where. Kind of hard to believe this is just a wall, an end wall with nothing. Actually, oops, there's one thing I saw that just stuck in my mind for a minute that I have a hard time believing would be here, but I'm just gonna take a look for a second. No, here's a dome. But again, complete destruction. Through this, go to the other ditch defense. I will go up here just to show you that we can't get through. There's only firing ports, which means there's another way in here. This is absolutely an enormous area. Yeah, none of us are getting through here. But this was a ditch defense, and this is what the ditch looks like today, so I guess you don't really need it. And it had been fired at. There's a lot of impact hits here. This was a fighting fort. This was not just fun and games. Let's see how we get in there.
Unfortunately, the fort is heavily damaged, but there really are some interesting elements of this fort here, if you can find them, as it's heavily overgrown and mosquito infested. There's still parts I simply could not find on my first visit here. Even with LiDAR, some of them eludes me, and the plans show extensive undergrounds, more so than what I could show you today. So again, this is a fort we have to piece together over more visits, preferably during the winter.
Behind me is Vanna von Braun's first test stand. Down the road is Dietmar's nuclear reactor. Over there is the Maginot Line and all its amazing forts. I'm visiting them all and I'm bringing them to you. So I really appreciate you like, follow, and share what I'm doing, trying to document all these important historical locations. And if you feel like you want to watch more pictures or documents that I use for these, go to lostbattlefields.com. And if you feel like helping me out with my travels, because gasoline and travel and airfare is expensive, my PayPal is there, protectionserviceint.com. You are more than welcome, but you don't have to. I appreciate all your support and all your help, and I love seeing these locations, and I love bringing them to you.